Halloween
forever.
So this guy, right, he walks into a library and he says to the librarian, he says, "Hey, do you have that new book for men with really small penises?" And the librarian looks on her computer, click, 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 click. She says, I don't know if it's in yet. And he says, "Yeah, that's the one." Welcome, boys and girls, to a very literary showdown of Halloween's Forever. I'm Brian.
And I'm Steve in King.
He is Steve. And we are here on this very special showdown evening. And, you know, from that library theme joke, I don't know. That might have jogged your memory. That might have reminded you that we are talking about Stephen King adaptations. That's one of them dang old word writers. He writes them word stories. But then some of them word stories gets turned into moving motion pictures. And we're going to be talking about some of them very, very specific ones this very evening on a little bit of a unique format for our showdown episode here, guys. I'll explain all that in a goddamn second. Hold your fucking pants on. We got other things to do at the top of the show here. First of all, I just started dipping into a little beer ski. Steve, I got a couple beer skis here. What do you got?
I have a beer ski. I have a beer ski and a tea ski.
Ooh, tell us about them.
So tea ski is just diet decaf orange iced tea from Turkey Hill. It's just really good.
I thought maybe you had like the Polish beer, Tiski, and you just had like a really authentic pronunciation of it.
I know. I don't even like that beer, so no. But no.
There's nothing good about it.
I have something similar of the region, but definitely from America. It's from Grist House, and it's called their Good Birdhouse, which is a Czech dark lager. So, like, Czech, that's kind of close to Poland, but it has nothing to do with Tiske. And
it's Central Europe, you guys.
Yeah.
So we're right there, next door neighbors. Speaking of Czech and Polish relationship here, I made some, and I'm going to forget the name, but there's a very tasty, I can never remember the name of it, Czech pickled sausage dish that I make at home on occasion, that I made a batch of today. And I made it with, because you can't find like Czech sausage, right? So I always make it with the kielbasa, with the Polish sausage.
Yeah.
You take the sausage, right? Fully cooked, kielbasa, slice it into little chunky logs, then kind of cut it like you're going to cut it long ways, but only go like halfway through, like it's a hot dog bun. And then instead of a hot dog inside the kielbasa, you smear some mustard and you little half a slice of onion. And then you put the whole thing in a big old jar. And then you make like a pickling brine with like bay leaf and allspice and black peppercorns and stuff. And you put it in there, let it sit in the fridge for a couple weeks. Ooh. You got some tangy little yummy sausage and onion situations to eat when you're drinking your beers.
Is it utupenshi?
Yeah, that's it. Yes.
I looked it up.
Yep. Drowning Man. I remember it's whatever it means, like drowning man or drowned man or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. But I can never remember the Czech pronunciation. But yeah, I made a little batch of that. So hey, Czech, Polish. Hey, we're simpatico this evening. How's the beer?
Yeah, no, the beer's really good. I mean, it doesn't stand out too much because it's just it's just a Czech dark lager. But they weren't trying to push it to be extra roasty or anything like that. They just wanted to make like an easy drinking dark brown ale at 4.7. So
nice. Well, that's pretty damn good. I'm going the opposite direction. Well, not. I just finished off a little a beer I've had quite a few times on the show, probably that I buy regularly from our lovely friends locally here at Burgers Brewing, Cultivar, their Italian pills. But I just took that to the face, and I just poured myself a bottle of 2021 Nemesis by Founders Brewing Company. And listen, as shitty of an organization as Founders is, and how much I absolutely despise working there for my time there, they make some fucking good ass beer, especially the big barrel aged sons of bitches and that sort of thing. And they're just any big like imperial big burly style. They just do a fucking hell of a job with it. This is their 2021 version of Nemesis, which is their American barley wine. And it's like a darker, richer, like, well, it's American version, right? So it's not English malts or anything. I don't think it's English malts, but it's American hops, but they've toned way down, and it's quite a bit darker than your average American barley wine.
Isn't like the Backwoods Bastard the other barley wine that they put out?
It's essentially a non-barrel aged version of Backwoods Bastard, I think. But I think it does have a little bit more dark malt in it, but it's in the same vein. And it's a big son of a bitch. It's 11.2% ABV. So it's a big motherfucker.
Yeah.
So Daddy gonna sip on that while we talk about these Stephen King movies. But it's like, yeah, I mean, it's been in the bottle for 2 years, so
yeah, it shouldn't be.
It's got that like there's still a little bit of firm bitterness to it, but it's like starting to take on a little bit of that like rum raisin, toffee date type of thing on there as well. So a little bit of cocoa in the background. Yeah,
and it shouldn't be too hot anymore now that it's been sitting around.
No, it's real nice and mellow. Yeah, I'm fucking with this. I think I have a 4-pack of it. I think this is my last 4-pack of it, and I just popped into it. So 3 left, boys. 3 left.
I think my last Founders was a CBS 2017 because like that was right about the time like all the stuff about like how bad their organization was coming out. So all that came out, and at the same time the 2017 was just like incredibly hot to the point of being almost undrinkable. And I was like, why the fuck are you selling something that is just like gasoline? Like I paid $32 for a bottle of gasoline. Fuck off.
Yeah.
And I was mad. I was just mad at everything.
Well, and it's a shame because like they have the capabilities of making some of the best beer in the world, but it's just like when you have foreign entities coming in and then like pushing their agenda, and like they were trying to get the remainder of a deal sold through their now parent company, Mal San Miguel, and they're just like pumping tons of like high gravity barrel aged beer into the market, and then you get the other end of the spectrum where all of a sudden there's a lot of like old beer out there. It's just that's what happens when you sell to some foreign company that doesn't know jack shit about craft beer, right? In any case, here we are, guys. It's our February Showdown episode. For those of you who've been listening along, we're going to talk about these Stephen King flickies here tonight, and we decided we're going to do something a little different this time around, a little different for the month of February. We are going to go head to head for the first time ever in Showdown history. Your boy and your other boy, Steve, we're going to go head to head, and we decided to do something a little bit different in the sense that because there's just 2 of us, we're each going to pick 2 movies. So we got the opportunity to pick 2 Stephen King adaptations. Now, gentlemen's rules applied. We did apply the Meg rule to one particular movie, which is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, because we both agreed that it's the best Stephen King adaptation in terms of like and listen, guys, we're not talking about faithfulness to the source material. We're talking about the fucking movie here, guys. So for The Shining, we were like, yeah, no, we can't pick The Shining. That's like picking Jaws for shark movies. So we sat that aside, but otherwise everything was wide open. So last week, if you didn't tune in, we did a little kind of a little snake draft, if you will, but only 4 picks, where I started off the top and just took a fucking banger in Pet Sematary. Of course, the 1983, right? 89. No, one of you. I was thinking
Dead Zone's 83.
Dead Zone's 83.
Yeah.
So I picked 89 Pet Sematary, hoping that I could pick the Dead Zone next time around, but Steve got second and third and snatched up Dead Zone for 83. And then also you picked 2007's The Mist.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go as far as to say that The Mist is on your list, Steve.
Yes.
Because the mist
God.
is on your list. And then I picked the fourth version, or my fourth pick, rather. I came up with a little bit of an out of the box one because I got thrown for a fucking loop, guys. Didn't think Steve was going to pick Dead Zone. I picked Gerald's Game, which watched it for the second time leading up to this episode and was like, God damn. I'm so glad I picked this movie because I actually forgot how much I like this movie. So I'm feeling pretty strong. And I will say, before we jump into them, we picked about 4 motherfucking bangers. I'm not even going to lie. This is a strong crop of movies here. All 4 of these movies I genuinely love. So it's going to be a tight one. And instead of us doing a vote here, because there's only 2 of us, we're going to put it on the social medias for all of our friends and social media followers to help us pick via a poll. So, if you didn't listen to the episode and you're just out there voting, shame on you. You're rad fucks interacting with us on the social medias. But if you want to be rad fucks and interact with us on social medias, you're more than welcome. Go join us over there at Halloween is Forever on Instagram, at Hallow Forever on Twitter. We're on other stuff. We're on the Facebooks. We're on the TikTokies, all those things. Just search Halloween is Forever. You'll find us. And then I'll remind you as well, because I think I probably forgot to the last couple of times, if you want to help out the show, if you like the show, there's a couple ways you can help us out. One, you can go and, just easy peasy, takes you about 30 seconds. Open up your podcatcher app, your Spotify, your Apple Podcasts, whatever the fuck you're doing. Go to the show page, scroll down, give us 5 stars or however many the maximum amount of stars are, and then write us a little quick review. Just say, hey, these guys, all right, pretty cool. And then submit it. If you want some free stickers in the mail and you've written one of them reviews, DM me and just say, hey, I wrote your review. I say, I'll trust you. I'll throw you some fucking stickers in the mail. I'll probably throw you some other dumb shit too. Some fucking atomic warheads and fucking little ghost and witch stickers or some stupid shit too. I got a lot of that kind of stuff around. But if you want to take that extra step, if you're feeling real froggy and you want to go support us in a paper money kind of way, you can go over to patreon.com/Halloween is Forever. Join our Patreon. Mm-hmm. Steve, we got some shit going on over there. What's going on over to Patreon?
Yeah, so if you jump on the Patreon, what you get is you get 2 tiers to choose from. 1 tier, that's an okay tier. It's all right. It's got extra postings. You get episodes early sometimes. You get a couple 2 treat things. It's all right. It's just a little...
fuck that tier.
Fuck that tier. But it's really just an amuse-bouche to get you excited.
It is an amuse-bouche.
Yeah. For the big tier, the $5 tier. It's not that much. It's
big dog tier.
Yeah, but it's only $5.
With the big dog tier.
Yeah, it's only $5 though. But for $5, you get all the stuff on the lower tier, the scamps tier. You get to be called a rascal instead of a scamp, and you get to get on the Discord. You can come watch episodes live, which means you get the episodes the earliest because you see them happening now. It's now.
As early as humanly possible. You are literally hearing the episode as it's happening. So you can be joining our other Patreon friends in the tier, in the Discord right this motherfucking second.
Yes. And you also get an extra monthly podcast of Family is Forever, where I torture Brian. Yeah, it's exclusive. Exclusive. And I torture Brian with every single Fast and the Furious film every month. He gets to watch a new one and hate it and be upset and cry and be really upset and want to die.
I hate it so much. It's becoming it's throwing a wrench in my whole existence. But I'm on the home stretch, so I feel pretty good about that. So you have, if you subscribe now, you got a whole big fucking backlog of episodes to listen to, because we're about to do the 8th one, which I don't even know what it's called. Again, I don't look ahead. I don't know anything about the Fate. Of course it is. What the fuck? Who cares? Is it Fate like spelled F but with like 8, like EIGHT?
Yeah, I'm sure in some promotional material it was. Like,
Christ almighty. These movies are stupid And if you like them, you're stupid. But if you are stupid enough to like them, then maybe you can enjoy this podcast. If you're like any normal person that understands how garbage they are, it also would probably be fun to listen to, because we mostly just make fun of how trash they are.
Yeah.
The podcast is very fun. Again, the movies are not. And you don't have to listen to the or watch the movies before listening to the podcast. In fact, I would strongly suggest you don't, because of how bad they are. But you can listen to the podcast, and we make fun of them, and it is a lot of fun. So yeah, we're at this point, we probably got we probably got a good 20 hours of extra content on the Patreon to listen to us, and we're on the home stretch. And then after we're done with all fucking 10 of these horrid, god-awful piles of human excrement, we're going to jump into something else. And your boy's going to pick. And I'm going to pick something that Steve has to watch. And it's going to be just infinitely better because it's not Fast and the Furious.
Well, better for Brian, and Brian hopes it'll be psychically damaging for me. Is what
I hope so. I'm really struggling. If you have any ideas of what I could do that would hurt Steve deep down in his soul, I would appreciate those suggestions. You know, we've talked about things like Hallmark Christmas movies, but nobody wants to talk about that in the fucking summertime, right? So I don't know. I like that idea, but I also don't like it for certain reasons. So if you have any other suggestions, throw them our way. I've got a couple things floating around the old bean upstairs, but I'm not really sure which direction we're going to go yet. So all the suggestions are very much welcome. All right. I think we got all the horse shit and nonsense and hooliganry at the top of the show out of the way. So let's get into these fucking 4 movies. Not the first time we've talked about 4 movies. We've had multiple guests on before. The first time we have 2 people talking about 4 movies. So I think we should go back and forth. I think we should do like a little bing bang bong type of situation. Steve has graciously offered to allow me to choose who goes first, because he got to choose whether I picked first or if you picked the second 2, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I picked the order of the snake draft. So
you picked the order. Right, exactly. So I'm going to pick the order in which we talk about the movie. So I would prefer to kick it off. I'm going to talk about a movie, then Steve's going to talk about a movie, then I'm going to talk about the movie, Steve's going to talk about a movie. Now, we're not going to go quite in depth as we normally do on every single movie, just because, again, we got 4 movies to talk about. But we're going to talk about, we're going to get into these son of a bitches, because, like I said, we got 4 fucking bangers here. I am going to pick the movie that I feel is the weakest, I would say, of my 2, but even so, pretty strong. Also, totally forgot. Watching Predator 2018 back, forgot Thomas Jane's in this son of a bitch. So also now relevant to our episode here tonight, because he's going to be talking about The Mist, because as I had referred to previously, The Mist is on your list.
Time for the Janiacs to unite.
Yeah, right. I didn't realize. I was reading, doing a little bit of research leading up to this here episode. I didn't realize Frank Darabont wanted Thomas Jane to play Rick in The Walking Dead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, if you want to go...
That makes total sense, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, it makes total sense, because, I mean, he had already done The Punisher. And so, like, he just has that little bit of cop face about him, is what he has. He has cop face. He has sheriff face. And then you can go through and, like, do a comparative IMDb between The Walking Dead and The Mist, and it's just like a shitload of people.
Oh, I think there's like 5 people. Yeah. There's 4 or 5 cast members on there, but like I just never you don't picture anybody else but Andrew, what's his fucking face or whatever,
Lincoln,
as Rick Grimes.
Andrew Lincoln, I think his name is.
Andrew Lincoln, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. But he would have done great.
He would have done pretty good as well. So yeah, but
also ballsy to pick the British guy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
To be your lead.
But I mean, he pulls off the accent. I swear I watched like two seasons of that show before I realized before I learned he was British.
Yeah,
I was
same.
like, God damn, it's pretty convincing. I mean, he's fantastic. Anyway, so I'm going to start it off with 2017's Gerald's Game, which is, like I said, was my kind of dark horse pick here, but I'm really pleased that I picked it. So this is a novel by one Mr. Stephen King. I'm a King fan. I've read quite a bit of Stephen King. Not like a diehard read everything under the sun by him. I've read like all of his short stories. I've read a handful of his novels. I'm now reading the Dark Tower series. I actually took a break and then I went off and read a couple other things, and then I'm going to circle back around to it. But I have not read Gerald's Game, and I have not read Pet Sematary either. And I have not read Dead Zone.
Okay.
So the only thing I've read is the novella, the short story, The Mist. Out of these four, there's only one that I've actually read.
Yeah.
Coincidentally.
It's funny because I was thinking about this as well, because I had I don't think I've seen the movie of anything I've read, and I've never read anything I've seen the movie of.
Really?
I think the only one for me that actually crosses both for some odd reason is The Cell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I saw them, or I read the original story when it was being published in parts, and then for whatever reason, I just sat down one day and watched the John Cusack, Samuel L. Jackson movie. I was just like, whatever. I don't know why I did this.
Yeah, I've read. There's so many movies that are based on his short stories, and they are like in Night Shift and like that. Don't have a ton to do, like they're loose adaptations. But even amongst like the full, like I've read Carrie, I've read It, I've read so I've read a decent amount, but most of them I watched a movie version before I read it. There's a couple instances, like some of the short stories, because I remember reading Night Shift way back when I was in like early high school, so like I had some of that in my head before I saw some of the movies. But anyway, Gerald's Game, never read the movie. But I kind of knew what it was about, right? I kind of caught through the zeitgeist what it's about. So let's set it up here. So first of all, one Mr. Mike Flanagan, which also I did realize because I saw this when it came out in 2017. And you had mentioned when we talked about before, you were like, oh, Mike Flanagan and Barbara Crampton. And I was like, oh, yeah. But I hadn't seen it since 2017. And I realized it's not Barbara Crampton.
No, it's not.
But she looks like Barbara Crampton. I mean, especially in certain scenes, she looks very much like Barbara Crampton.
I got confused, and I think I confused it with Jacob's wife, which sounds Gerald's Game, Jacob's wife. It sounds, yeah. My brain just is,
yeah.
I'm old, people. Leave me alone. My brain is failing.
When you said it, I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot she was in that. And then I watched it again. I was like, oh, wait, no. She just looks like her. But she does kind of look like her. But anyway, Carla Gugino?
Yeah, Gugino. Yeah.
She plays Jessie. And then you have Bruce Greenwald as Gerald, who is a Mike Flanagan regular. He is in just about everything I think Mike Flanagan puts out. Most recently, he was in the Fall of the House of Usher, which is like his new big thing that everybody was all psyched about, which I haven't watched yet because I went and reading the novella, short story, whatever it is, by Poe, and then I was going to go back and watch the because that was just one that like I might have read 20 years ago. I don't know, but don't really remember much about. But there's a bunch of familiar faces in it, including we'll get into it. But the tall man from Twin Peaks. You've got Kate Siegel, as you're going to expect to see in pretty much every damn Mike Flanagan joint, although she plays a slightly smaller part. But really, Jessie and Gerald are 90% of the movie. This is almost a chamber drama type of situation, really.
Yeah, really.
It really take 90% of it takes place in one room and has two characters, although those two characters are playing almost four parts in a lot of ways, or at least three parts in most of it. So Gerald and Jessie, married couple, slightly older, in their 50s. They take this trip out to the woods, you know, romantic trip to kind of help what you pick up as their struggling marriage. Gerald is just a horny old business boy. That's how I would summarize him. And he's just popping Viagra before the groceries are put away. Like he's ready to fuck. And Jesse is feeding $200 steaks to stray demon dogs. So that kind of gives you an idea of where she's at, right? But they've been married for like, what, 10 or 11 years? So they got married a little bit later in life, you know, in their 40s, you're going to expect, right? But they've been together for a decent amount of time. It's clear that they are just rich as fuck, right? And it's Gerald's career who has projected them into like massive wealth, and his, there's some sort of strain on their relationship, especially this like sexual strain, and you don't really know exactly what's happening yet, but that much is made very clear. You see very like in the early scenes, he's got these handcuffs, and like they're like, oh, things are gonna get nasty, right? So they're gonna go in the bedroom and start fooling around, and he handcuffs her to the bed. She is not super into it, but like she's trying, right? So like it's this kind of awkward scenario playing out. And then you start to figure out like he's got this very I don't know, somewhat alarming kind of rape fantasy type of thing. So it kind of goes back and forth between like hey, like you know, he's kind of a dom type situation and he wants her to be submissive, but then he takes it kind of too far at times, so it gets very uncomfortable, and shit just kind of goes south between them pretty quickly, and he is portrayed to be like this domineering, like pretty bad guy, I would say, is probably clear to say. And as they're kind of getting to the point where like he's just like essentially looks like he's going to rape his wife, which, listen, not the most pleasant sentence to say in the world, but like that's definitely the direction it's going. He just has a fucking heart attack and dies. And if you didn't know that that's what this story was about, it would be a heck of a fucking left turn. So I did going in, even though I didn't read the story, like I had known that I just picked up on that spoiler at some point, that that's what happens with this story. Because this story is, you know, it's an old story, right? I don't know what year this book was read. I didn't write it down or written, but I didn't write it down. But like it's been around for a minute. But she is now handcuffed to the bed. She has now like kind of kicked his lifeless body off the bed. He has fallen off the bed, cracked his head on the floor. Blood is oozing on the floor, and she is like kind of losing it pretty quickly, as one would, right?
I gotta say, like, props to Bruce Greenwood in this scene, because he is pulling off like the rapey older douche bro pretty well. But then when he has his heart attack, he makes like the most pathetic noises as he goes down. It's just like,
he's fucking great, dude. He is so underrated as an actor. Like every time I see him on screen, he's fucking Bruce Greenwood's tremendous.
Like he's great, and just like the whimpering and just the last gasp that's just like a wheeze and a cry at the same time. She's like, and then that's it. It's just like, oh, what a bitch. He just goes out. He goes out.
He just went out like a real bitch, Gerald. You're gonna do that, and your name is Gerald.
Which it's just such a great setup though for like the veneer of like these type of guys is just that. It's just a veneer, because as soon as they're faced with mortality, it's I don't want to die. He's all machismo until death comes knocking, and it's
but which is so funny for us to make fun of him for being scared of death, like we've ever dealt with that before. But it's just really funny to just like the way he looks, like he plays a douchebag really well. Like he does a great job of that. Old rich douchebag, like he's kind of been typecast as that, but he does it so well. So she's starting to go like kind of delirious pretty quickly. Jessie is. And she starts to hear these footsteps outside her open window. And then this stray dog rolls in, and it's like a dang old, it's like a German Shepherd-ish type of mix. And it looks like a fucking demon dog. All right.
It's mangy as shit.
Mangy looking demon dog. And it starts munching on Gerald, and she's trying to chase it away. But of course she's handcuffed to the post of the bed. Then all of a sudden, Gerald wakes up, and you're like, wait, what the hell's going on? Well, you quickly kind of figure out it's just a hallucination, and shit just starts getting chatty at this point. And Jessie starts reassessing her life, her relationships with Gerald, and then you come to realize very much so with her family as well, specifically her father, her mother as well, but specifically her father. And she watches herself like escape while kind of her second self. So, she pops up. You've got Gerald popping up, and of course Gerald is a corpse on the floor, but Gerald is also talking to her, right? Simultaneously, you have Carla Gugino pop up as well, who's Jessie. So she's talking to herself, and then Gerald is talking to her too. So it's almost like in a sense, it's the angel and the devil on her shoulder. It's herself kind of reassuring her and trying to push her through and explain the gravity of the situation to herself. And then you also have Gerald, who's like the part of her consciousness that's like belittling her and like telling her she can't do it. Not always. I mean, it's a mixed bag, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not quite as clear cut as that, but that's kind of the gist of what you're getting.
Yeah. A lot of like, I don't know, I guess we can call her maybe Ghost Jessie or Future Jessie or something like that. But like a lot of her stuff is also kind of the logic and problem solving. So it's not just like girl bossing, you can do it. It's also like, remember the tag. You can roll up the tag and use it as a straw. And like, whereas Gerald, even though a lot of his stuff is negative, there's also one that kind of stuck out to me where she's trying to figure out like how long can a person last without water? And he's like 3 days or something. He's like, yeah, that sounds right. I think I read that somewhere. Where like that's really her brain telling, like she's trying to remember. And I thought that's clever, but the way it's framed of him being unsure and negative as well.
Well, it's kind of like she is the person that is deep within herself that has the capabilities of working out how to get out of this. And he is the, not necessarily always negative, but is the kind of she's the inner voice and he's like the outer voice a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So like maybe that's something she obviously knew. They're both inner voices, but like she had learned that from somewhere else. So that's how he brings it into the picture. I don't know if I'm doing a great job describing that, but anyway, so she like watches herself escape while her second self is arguing with fake Gerald about like whether or not that would work, kind of thing. So anyway, it gets this, you start to get these hints of her very traumatic past. There's a whole saga with this water glass on a shelf, which is this great suspense. So she's trying to get to the water glass. She gets the water glass. It was the glass that he used to take the Viagra. And then eventually she gets it, but she can't reach it. Like you mentioned, she ends up using a tag off of her like nightie that she had bought to kind of like, be romantic or whatever. And she rolls that up and uses it as a straw. So she's able to drink some water, keep herself alive a little bit longer. But it becomes this like waiting game type of thing. Meanwhile, the dog is eating Gerald, right? So like this is some brutality happening. This is what comes to like my favorite element of the story. And this is such a great representation of what Stephen King does really well that I love, is his stories, his best stories are very dreamlike. And you don't really know what's real and what isn't real. Everything he does, like Stephen King, if you're a fan of Stephen King, that everything he does is very character driven, right? And you are, whether you're seeing it from the character's point of view or another character's point of view, whatever, it's first or third person, everything's very character driven. And oftentimes his best psychological stuff is, this kind of unreliable narrator. In this case, great example, she's kind of losing her mind. She's delirious. She doesn't know whether she can trust herself or not. She wakes up in the middle of the night again, delirious from stress and this traumatic experience, but also like dehydration and hunger and all this stuff. She's been, it's been at this point, I don't know, 24-ish hours. I forget exactly. But she wakes up and there's this big creepy guy, big, tall son of a bitch over in the corner of the room. And you just kind of see his silhouette. And then he walks up and he's just this big creepy guy with this kind of like strange looking skeletal structure, and he's got a big old damn bag of bones and jewelry and stuff, and you're like, this is not cool. And you just assume this is really part of her, kind of hallucinations and kind of traumatic stuff that she's going through, right? Pretend Gerald starts like freaking out on her in the morning, and it's this very creepy monologue about her not just dying and dying alone and dying, he keeps saying like dying hard, like this really, because she wakes up, she has these insane cramps, and it's harrowing, right? There's a lot of scenes in this movie that I can only describe as harrowing.
Yeah.
And then he starts explaining like, well, that guy in the room is like death coming to get you. So then you're like, oh, okay, maybe it's not real.
Right.
But then he's like, then why did the dog leave? Because the dog was real. We know the dog was real. That happened really early on.
We saw the dog before she was even in peril. So
yeah. So you're like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah. He fed the dog the steaks outside. So the dog's real. And then you're like, oh fuck, something did scare the dog away. It might be that big son of a bitch. So then, Gerald starts, fake Gerald starts calling her Mouse. And you start to get these flashbacks of her dad calling her that as a kid. There's all this tie into the solar eclipse that happened when she was a kid, when they were on a family vacation. You start to understand these issues with her mom. But then you understand that her dad was a full-on molester. There is this really wildly uncomfortable and really unpleasant scene to watch with her dad, who is a lawyer, and he's just a fucking piece of shit. And essentially what had happened was, while her, siblings and mom were away, her dad, I guess like masturbated while she was sitting on his lap, like during the eclipse. It was like this, it was really, like I said, extremely unpleasant, fucked up scene. And then like, not only that, but like gaslit her into thinking it was her fault and that she would be in trouble for it and that she should never tell anyone, and just like classic abuser behavior. And that's when she wakes up in like a lot of pain and all these cramps and stuff. And it's just a brutal series of sequences. So she's really got to face a lot of demons about her abusive father and her past that she is like very explicitly buried very, very deep in her psyche, in her subconscious. But anyway, you start to see she notices a footprint of the big guy that came in, and she's like questioning, is it death coming to get me, or is he like some weird like local drifter or something like that? And having not read the book and not even really knowing how much of this is in the book, you really found yourself questioning, like, because he's like, he looks supernatural in a lot of ways, right? He's got this like very not human look to him. Not only is he extremely tall, he's got this very interesting kind of bone structure to his skull. The guy's name is Carol Strychen. He plays so like if you saw him, horror fan, you will immediately recognize him from a number of things. Not only does he play like the giant in Twin Peaks, but he also plays Lurch in the Addams Family from the 90s. He's in Men in Black. He's in Addams Family Value, for that matter. Like, he plays Lurch. That's probably the thing most people remember him from. But also Twin Peaks would be his other big credit. But he has been in a million. He's in Dr. Sleep. Speaking of Stephen King, like, he plays one of the
and Mike Flanagan.
Oh yeah, of course, and Mike Flanagan. So he's a Mike Flanagan guy. He's definitely been in some Stephen King adaptations. You'll recognize him immediately. And he has and I looked this up, but I did not write it down. But I don't want to speak out of turn here in terms of like the unique look that he has, but he has a very unique kind of like cranial structure.
So
that they really play up in the movie with makeup too. Right?
So I was gonna say they do it up more with, you know, the makeup, but like all the other movies we mentioned, he pretty much goes, you know, sans makeup, because for the most part he's a really tall. I mean, he just is 7 foot tall. And then, I don't know if he actually suffers from acromegalia, like they say in the film. But that's usually what.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure if he does or not.
That's usually what causes people to be that, like to be that tall, and then have kind of the more severe features of like larger hands and like longer arms, and so that to the point that they look even more out of proportion. But then in this film, they accentuate it even more by putting like a bunch of fucking tumors on his head, essentially. So really dramatic with the prosthetics in this movie. But even in real life, like, he has a very pronounced jawline. Like, his facial structure is very linear and very, very like pronounced and kind of deep features. Just quickly before we move on, one of my favorite roles that I saw him very early on in was he was in both Oblivion and Oblivion 2, which were Roger Corman sci-fi Western movies, and he plays Gaunt, the Undertaker. It just rules. So go watch his movies.
Didn't we talk about Oblivion recently too? I feel
Not recently.
Oh no. You know what it was? I know why. Is because I posted something about White Buffalo with Charles Bronson on the Instagram, and somebody called out Oblivion because Western, sci-fi-ish, creepy, horror-y Western stuff. Yeah,
Oblivion fucking rules so hard. That might be the punishment movie if I win. Because I know you haven't seen
yourself, you rat fuck. No, I haven't. But I know of it. Yeah. I know what it is. Yeah, I'm sure I will. I know what it is. It's been something.
It's got Harryhausen scorpions. But we'll move on.
I'm in. Anyway, so you get this whole big flashback to her dad, like gaslighting her to keeping the secret, like I said, and then also like pitting the mom against her. It's really rough. I mean, this movie, not only is it like harrowing at times, but like this along with all four of these movies, if somebody described them as emotionally devastating, I wouldn't disagree. Like, all four of these movies are fucking at times a tough watch.
The Dead Zone.
The Dead Zone is really the only one that isn't. Maybe not that it isn't. Because it is.
Yeah. But it's the one that is the least devastating, and has like Stilson blocking himself with a child is the least worst thing that happens to a kid in these four movies.
I know. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Like, it's we'll wait when we get to it. It's more melancholy than emotionally devastating. Yeah. The rest of the movies are that. Anyway, I just forgot how much of that is in this movie. I think the first time I watched this movie in 2017, like I was hardcore stoned. Like, I think I was like fucking zooted out when I watched this movie when it first came out. So I was just like a little numb to it. And this time I was just like stone sober watching it, taking notes. And I was like, fuck me, dude.
Yeah.
This movie's heavy.
Yeah. This movie is simply through competency of filmmaking. I feel like this movie is the biggest bummer of the four, because Pet Sematary. Yeah,
I mean, with the exception of the end of The Mist. But
the end. But that's the thing. Like, The Mist has a definite turn where it becomes it veers from B-movie monsters to, oh Jesus, this is like getting serious. Whereas this movie's always serious, and I'm just saying it's well done from, Mike Flanagan, but like it's just a total bummer because of all the subject matter. And Pet Sematary should be the biggest bummer, but it's cartoonish in such a way that it keeps it from landing in a way that hurts you.
It does. It's almost feels like there's a little bit of bubble wrap around it because it is so. I don't even know if I would call it cartoonish as much as I would call it like it feels like a fantasy or a dream. So it feels like you're like it's a bad dream you could just wake up from.
Yeah, I would also just say the performance of Lewis is done cartoonishly. That's the biggest cartoonish part for me. So
yeah, that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. Now that you say that, in any case, this is my favorite scare of the movie, and I'm usually not a big jump scare guy. And the thing about this that is really distressing isn't even the jump, but she wakes up and or she like kind of opens her eyes after all this, and the demon guy, the fucking tall, what they call the Moonlight Man, is licking her toes.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, but then it turns out it's actually, she wakes up and it's the dog, which is also, this dog is going to try to eat her. So like, it's not that much better, but it's better than a 7-foot tall guy with a big bald head licking your toes. But this is a scene that I'm not going to do justice to, but like, you should watch this movie because there's a really chilling scene of Gerald explaining to her how they're going to find her corpse. It is fucking chilling stuff. She comes to the realization, Jesse, that she's going to have to cut her hand off by breaking the glass of water and wedging it into the shelf above her. And then she like saws around her wrists and basically like degloves herself.
Yeah.
And it is rough.
Oof.
Rough.
Maybe it's my age. As I'm aging, I'm not. Maybe I don't have the stomach for this kind of stuff anymore. This was brutal. And then there's a film I recommended in January for our patrons, starring Natasha Lyonne, called Antibirth. And there is some foot stuff in that I just like, that I cringed at. I'm just like, what the fuck is like, that's so gross. But like the degloving in this is done so well. And I'm like, Oh, the practical effects are so good. And also this is not a violent movie for the most part, aside from like a dog chewing on some skin over in the corner. So it really hits home. I mean, this is the great version of like less is more, right? Yeah, absolutely.
So she gets her hand out. She kind of eventually, now she's got some leverage, so she can move the bed now. Her whole plan works, and and she gets out. She gets over to the key. She gets the key. She unlocks herself, but she's lost so much blood. She's so dehydrated. As she's escaped, you're like, oh my God, she did it. You're so excited for her. But then she passes out and she wakes up and the fucking dog's trying to eat her, which is like the thing you're worried about the dog, but then you're worried about the Moonlight Man. Anyway, she chases the dog off. She gets the car keys. And in perhaps the most memorable scene in the movie, she gets the car keys. She's walking out of the house. And at the end of the hall, you see the fucking Moonlight Man standing there at the end of the hall. And you get this showdown between them in the hall. And she walks up to him. And you got to remember, like, as the viewer, you're starting to understand that maybe he is real. Like, it's actually like, fuck, he might be real. But she's not sure. So she walks up to him. And he's just kind of standing there, like blocking her way out. And he had seen that he was collecting jewelry or trinkets of some sort. Yeah. He had this bag he showed her earlier. So you're like, is he stealing this from corpses? Is he killing people? You don't know. So she gives him, so there's obviously some symbolism in this where she gives him her wedding ring, and he's like, kind of satiated in a way by that and lets her pass. She drives off in her car and she's nodding off at the wheel. She starts hallucinating of him in the back seat. And she crashes into a tree. And she wakes up and the neighbors have kind of come to help her. Fast forward, and she's kind of mostly recovered at this point. So it's been almost a year, I think, at this point. You know, they did a lot of surgeries on her hand. She's got most of the functionality back of her hand. And she keeps seeing the Moonlight Man in her dreams every night with these fucking sick, glowing, like supernatural looking red eyes. And she's like, at this point, she's like, no, she's kind of still questioning whether he's real or not, as one would. So as a viewer, we're also questioning whether he's real. And then she starts this, you know, a foundation with, you know, because of course she got a bunch of insurance money from Gerald's death. So she starts this foundation, starts helping people who have suffered from abuse, sexual abuse and that sort of stuff, especially as children. So she's helping people and kind of really dealing with her trauma by helping people. And then she sees this newspaper article that confirms that the Moonlight Man was real. I love this and the subsequent scene, but I also, this is the one time where this movie suffers from this is a book being made into a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And all of our movies tonight do that in a certain sense. But this is really, for the most part, this I think was a really good adaptation, even though I haven't read the book, but it felt like a movie still up until this part where it's her doing a lot of voiceover, right? Exposition.
Yeah. And that's partially like not King's fault, but the difficulty of adapting King, because so much of King is internal monologue and people remembering their trauma and people remembering their stories. Like there's just like one shot earlier in this film where she's on the bed, and I haven't read the book myself, but like she has this specific butterfly tattoo on her ankle, and it's very clearly, and like I can almost guarantee if that's in the book and not just Carla's own tattoo, then King probably spends 2 fucking pages on the time she went and got that tattoo, you know? So because he loves that kind of detail in bolstering what brings his characters to that point, you know? Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I agree. The ending, it feels almost like a Sex and the City epilogue, the way she is just like writing out this note and like monologuing.
Such a wildly inappropriate analogy, but accurate too. I know.
Content wise, it's inappropriate, but execution wise, it's like very similar.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, all 4 of these movies kind of struggle from that. Even The Mist, which is, you know, I forget. I want to say it's only like it can't be more than about 50 or 60 pages. I think it might be a little longer. It's been a little while since I've read it, but you know, the rest of these books are like, you know, are like 300 and 400 page books, stories. So, but anyway, she says, but I do like the reveal. It's pretty good in the sense that he's like, he's going through his progression, which I think this is a good way. Like, of course, this was a challenge of the filmmakers, but I think they made the best of it in the sense that she describes it as a progression. So you get some more like scary moments, not scary moments, but it's almost like somebody's reading you a scary bedtime story where she's like, well, he started out as just like coming and stealing jewelry from corpses. Then he did this, then he escalated, you know, and then eventually started killing people and doing like horrible things to their corpses. But refers to him as the Crypt Keeper as well, which is just like, I mean, obviously when we think of the Crypt Keeper, we think of, you know, silly little guy with the puns, but like this is like the real deal scary Crypt Keeper.
Well, it was the Crypt Creeper.
But eventually Crypt Creeper. Yeah. But he basically goes full Ed Gein at one point. Right. She explains. But then there's this whole like sequence where she's writing the letter to her child self, and like basically she's going to you know, approach and face her fear, which of course, and her trauma, which of course was her father. But in this case, she's going to face the surrogate of her father, which is the Moonlight Man. And I love this scene. I fucking love this scene. It just is bonkers in the best way possible. So she goes to his arraignment. Okay. So she just walks in unannounced to a courtroom, and he is standing before the judge, and he is what you saw. He is a 7 foot tall, big hulking fucking guy with the big head. And she walks in, and everyone kind of looks at her, and she walks through the gate straight up to him. And he says, and I didn't write it down, but it's something like, "Oh, you're made of moonlight," or whatever.
Yeah,
like
he's I think he's actually repeating something she said to him, because
she is.
Yeah, because he's saying, "You're not real. You're not real. You're made of moonlight."
Yes, which is what she said to him earlier. So like what it says to us as the viewer in that moment is that doesn't live in the same reality as the rest of us. And he is capable of anything. And he turns, and he's shackled up, kind of has like the ankle and wrist shackles that you would see like an extremely dangerous inmate have in the courtroom. And he just pulls them apart like they're made of, nothing. And the whole place gasps. And it's such a great scene. And she just stands up to him in that moment, because he's almost this like Lenny of Mice and Men type character, where like she just like stands up to him, and he just kind of like, I don't want to say cowers, but is just like completely taken aback by her standing up to him, because he's used to people reacting to him in a totally different way, because he's so, formidable and foreboding. Right. But it's a great scene. I'm not doing it justice, but and then you see the ultimately she kind of reconciles things with her child self, and essentially the eclipse, the darkness that was brought on by the symbolic eclipse that happened on that day when her father abused her, is eventually lifted, is kind of what we ultimately learn. So it has a happy kind of redemptive ending of her kind of walking off into the sunset, if you will. So just like I said, emotionally draining, but also scary and threatening in so many ways. And you're rooting for her, right? Because she's got nothing but adversity kind of from every step along the way, whether it be like relationship driven to, Gerald, to the fucking dog, to the horrifying big guy. Like it's just, and then ultimately, facing her demons and everything.
Yeah.
So I just, I saw this movie in 2017. I really liked it. But like I said, I think was just stoned enough to not really have to deal with as emotionally devastating as this. And then I watched it this time around, and the more I watch, and I know like he's kind of got a mixed bag in terms of fans and how people feel about him. But overall, I'm a Mike Flanagan fan. Like I'm just like, no matter what, I've never seen anything from him that I'm not like, fuck, no, that was, even if it's not exactly what I expected or would have ideally wanted, I still never walk away, questioning the vision and the execution.
Yeah. I like, he's competent, and I like a lot of his stuff, and I like probably 95% of this movie. It's just kind of that last wrap up that I am like, all right. And then, more specifically, the line she delivers in court. And I don't know if this is in the book or if this is his. That's the problem, is I don't know if he was just being too much of a stickler to the source material, or if he wrote his own thing in that just isn't that good. But the line of "you aren't so big" just feels it just.
Or wasn't it like, I remember you being bigger or something like that?
No, I think it might be that, but it's still along the lines. It's still just along the lines of you're not so big. And it's just like, I don't know. It just took all the wind out of the sails, because she does that. She does that. And then she girl bosses out of the court into the daytime. And I'm just like, that wasn't what this was about. Like anything else, even just staring him down or just spitting in his face or just something less. It doesn't have the emotional impact of the direness of everything else we just watched.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. I don't love the line either, and I remember it was something along those lines, right? We're on the same page in terms. It was something about you being not as big as I thought you were, kind of thing. I like that it was belittling to the threat, because it, even though it wasn't like a fucking Cobra style line,
right.
I do like that it was like, because it was more for her than him,
right? Yeah, and it
was more like, wow, I had this really built up in my head, and of course she's talking about the trauma with her father,
right? Yeah, there's the obvious parallelism of like, because he's a giant and he towers over a grown woman. There's the parallelism that goes back to her and her father, where he would have been more physically intimidating as well.
Yeah,
but we're talking about somebody who degloved herself, standing up to somebody who eats people, and it's just like, you're not so big, bah, sashay away. It's like, everybody in that courtroom has to be like, what the fuck was that?
Well, you're taking exception to the way that she did literally sashay away kind of a sexy dress in the last scene. That was the part that I was like, that's a little on the nose. Yeah, I agree. They could have not, they didn't completely botch it, but yes, in my opinion, but it could have been more devastating. I think the real thing that sold the scene was the look on his face. Yeah. When she said that to him, which was like because he's used to people cowering, you know, and it's not like he's necessarily trying to get her to cower. He's not. No. In fact, he says this very like almost childlike line, but it's the, no one stood up to me before, and this is how I react when somebody stands up to me, you know, kind of thing. Exactly. So that's what sells the scene. So it didn't bother me as much as I think it bothered you, but I can see. Yeah. I can see what you're saying.
And I guess the other part of that is like exactly what you just said, that this killer is a fucking simpleton, because they've even laid out like, he called his sister mommy and her husband daddy. And so like he if you look at it,
he's not grasping.
Yeah, no. If you look at it at face value, it's not that he's confused that he's being stood up to. He's confused that somebody said, you're not so big to me in the middle of court. Like, he doesn't even know the processions of what's going on. And then somebody else came and yelled at him. So it doesn't have the impact for him either. He's just like, me not big? Uh-oh. Like,
yeah. But she's saying it to her dad.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. She's saying it to her dad, and it's for her, and it's for her younger self. It's all that, but it's also just like,
and he's also like, but they do, maybe they make him too sympathetic, because like he should be a little bit more sinister, right? Perhaps. Yeah. And I think that they try to make him, I think the way that they make it more like emotionally charged in terms of like him being more sinister is the way he pulls his cuffs off. Right. And it's like, even though maybe he's not, his intentions aren't to harm in that moment, he is threatening. Right. He is so physically threatening, because he just rips off his cuffs like they might as well. It might as well have been a rubber band or something.
Right. Yeah. 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 It's just so weird. And again, it's hard for me to say what the choices were, because I haven't read the book, so I can't.
Same. Yeah.
So I don't know.
It felt like they were keeping it pretty faithful. I don't know. I am going to read this book because I really like the story. And like, I used to be like, fuck, if I watch the movie, like I don't want to read the story, but there's so many ones that differ so much. And now it's become kind of an interesting thing for me to go back. And like, I've been going back and reading some of the less like like tier 2, tier 3 Lovecraft stories that have movies circled around them,
right? Yeah.
Not like Call of Cthulhu and not like At the Mountains of Madness, like some of the like tier 2 and tier 3 Lovecraft stories recently, and I'm like, it actually doesn't detract from it that much that I've seen a movie that comes close to it, because they're very, very different.
Yeah. Most of the Lovecraft stuff is like, because it was one written of the time, and like they're pretty short for the most part. So
yeah,
you have
the
to
longest
put in,
thing you're going to have is like 70, 80 pages. Like everything else is like between 6 and 40 pages.
Yeah, so you have to actually put in a lot of padding to make a Lovecraft movie, whereas the Stephen King movie, you have to take a lot out. So
yeah. All right, well, that was Gerald's game, guys. What do you want to do first, Steve?
I don't know. I'm kind of flipping the coin, because it's like I could do the Dead Zone, because you started with your weakest one, and I maybe think the Dead Zone might be my weaker one.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
But also at the same time, do people want to sit and wait for me to talk about The Mist? So
that's a good question. I don't know.
I think I'm going to go with The Mist. I'm going to go with The Mist.
Okay. You can't resist.
Can't resist The Mist.
The Mist is on your list.
How did was Sierra Mist out in 2007? Did they have a product tie-in? They should have had one.
They should have. I feel like that was like probably not far off from Sierra Mist's introduction.
Yeah, how did we not get that? But all right,
Come on, guys.
Let's get into The Mist, 2007, directed by Frank Darabont. And boy, there's a lot behind this movie that, like, this movie was almost very, very different from what it turned out to be. And I know I texted you earlier in the week, but they put out a Blu-ray of the film, and they put out, Frank Darabont included a black and white cut on that Blu-ray. Yeah. Now you can go on archive.com and you can find it. And so you can watch a 2-hour black and white film if you want. And I suggest it, because
I didn't, because I'd already watched. Well, and I also have it on DVD. So I'd already watched it on DVD. And I've seen this movie by far the most out of any of these 4 movies. Like I've probably seen this movie 10 fucking times.
Yeah.
Because it used to be on Sci-Fi and or IFC in like the 2010s. Like this was a regular rotation movie. So I've seen this movie a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure. So,
but I've not seen the black and white version. I do want to do that because I love this movie.
So I totally suggest it, because one, it actually was the original intention. Frank wanted to make it black and white from the start.
Oh yeah.
And studio told him no, like, because he had already been fighting with the studio about the ending.
He's like, I want less people to see this movie. Yeah. And they were like, no, Frank, no.
He's like, I want this movie to be impenetrable, and then I'm going to bum everybody out.
To be honest, though, the CGI would have looked better in black and white. I'm sure it looks better.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring up it. It actually really does look better. Not everything, but a lot of things do. A significant amount of the animation almost looks stop motion-y.
I can see that.
Just like kind of, it feels like at a different frame rate, almost like, the movie's running at 24 and the monsters are running at 15. So it kind of has that almost Harryhausen like look,
especially the flying shit.
Exactly.
The
the pterodactyls. Stuff, the pterodactyls like feel way like a Harryhausen thing now. In the tentacle still looks pretty bad.
Well, I mean, that's the sticking point. Yeah. Everyone hates the tentacle, but like once you know it's coming, you're not even thinking about it.
It happens
but
early.
The rest of the creatures look pretty good. Like I always thought they looked pretty good.
Oh yeah,
for 2007.
Yeah, all the creatures.
This movie's almost 20 fucking years old.
Right.
Like not quite,
but it's getting there. It's over 15. So
yeah. So
it's getting there, and then you have like the little bug creatures who also have like human teeth, which is so upsetting. Like that's my favorite.
Yeah.
I
mean, I'm watching Predator 2018 right now. It doesn't look that much better.
No. No, the movie's CGI is ass. I don't know why they did so much CGI in it.
I'm in the scene right now with like the big giant predator. He, like when he busts into the fucking like apartment, you know, and he's like looking at the Pikachu and shit. You know what I'm talking about? And I'm like, this looks like dog shit.
It looks terrible.
And this was 11 years later. You know?
Yeah, they gave Shane Black like no money for that movie. I think I don't know what happened on that one. It's not good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Mist is based off the short novella. And it's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple setup. You have, the army's doing experiments and they unleash the mist, but they unleash it on a small town where people don't know what the fuck's going on. And everybody's just kind of, drawn into the mist. It starts with a terrible thunderstorm, which, sets up our kind of protagonist family of Thomas Jane and his son and the wife. And then they go over to talk to the neighbor, who's played by Andre. Is it Braher?
Brower.
I'd call
Brower.
Braher. Yeah, Andre Braher. R.I.P. He just passed away last month, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of Brooklyn Nine-Nine fame.
Yeah, Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
One of my favorite characters of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, he's just great. Like, he's great in most of the films he does. And like, that's the other thing about this film. This film is like an ensemble cast. Like
oh yeah,
the cast rules. And we'll talk about it when we get to the supermarket, which basically just happens right after, you get this setup between Thomas Jane's character and Andre Braher's character. They have a strained relationship as neighbors. They obviously had some legal issues with each other, but they're willing to set that aside because, his car, Andre's car had been destroyed in the storm. So they're willing to ride out to town and get some supplies at the supermarket. The supermarkets is where you just get the entire sense of the town. Everybody's kind of not so much panicked because the mist hasn't set in yet, but everybody's there gathering supplies because of the storm. And you start getting snapshots of all the characters. And then this is where like you get to meet pretty much everybody that you're going to spend the rest of the time with. And again, it's just a cavalcade of like character actors. Marcia Gay Harden plays Mrs. Carmody, who turns into the villain of the film, but she is, like this religious nut who's just like, spouting off. She doesn't have much to spout off, but she'll just run her mouth anyway. Which is not in the story. Like, she was a character in the story, but she wasn't a weird religious zealot in the story. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but I like it. I like it in this. I feel like it was tighter, and you could learn to hate her and mistrust her sooner, knowing that her motivations were, as a religious zealot.
Knowing that they're driven by bunkum. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a way of accelerating your distrust for her, which I liked.
Yeah. And
one thing but before we get into the character, one other thing, because I'm going to forget, is that I disliked, though, is that it doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter. But this is set in Louisiana, the movie, which is so weird because everything is set in Maine, right? Or in in New England. When it comes to King, specifically Maine, 90% of the time.
Yeah.
And this story is no different. But for some reason, they decided to set the movie in Louisiana. But it could have just as easily been Maine. I don't understand.
I think that actually might be a concession. I think that's a concession to the state of Louisiana because it was filmed there. It was filmed in Louisiana, so they might have had to call it Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? Remember how we talked about...
Oh, I see.
Yeah, remember how we talked about Abu Dhabi pays for people to come to film in Abu Dhabi in Furious 7?
But you know what? This is not a great representation of Louisiana. We have religious zealots. We have kind of shitty grocery stores. Like... it's not like it's like Abu Dhabi looked glamorous, you know what I mean?
True.
In that movie.
Look, every fucking I think this is before Georgia figured out how to do their tax credit, and they didn't make everything set in Georgia, but everything has to be tagged with that Georgia peach made in Georgia fucking thing now. So
yeah.
So
this is 2007. They were just figuring it out.
Yeah. I mean, I still think they don't necessarily say that it's in Louisiana, though. I think it's still kind of supposed to be a stand-in for Maine.
Really?
Because I don't think they say it.
Say something.
See, I don't.
Maybe not. I might be wrong.
Yeah, it is filmed in Louisiana for sure, but
yeah,
I don't think they actually ever get specific about where it's at, and so we just assume. Yeah, we're getting chats from the patrons right now. Dan saying he doesn't remember that either.
I am struggling to remember that as well, but I will say that you don't have a bunch of Mainer accents like you would typically in I mean, obviously Pet Sematary is gratuitous, but you get the idea. Like I don't remember that either, but
yeah, you don't have enough regional accents to set off one way or the other. So
yeah,
but
I mean, does seem to be like a whole host of rednecks that for some reason seem vaguely Southern to me, but they don't have Southern accents. So I guess you're probably right. It's pretty much just like, this is a small rural town in anywhere USA.
Right. Which may be part, I believe you're referring to William Sadler as Jim and David Jensen as Myron. Like they both are kind of Myron. They're both kind of, Southernly bumpkin. And I don't think anybody, it's one of those things, nobody told them a location. So they just did location accent for like where they're shooting. They just assumed, nobody's telling us anything, so we're just going to do the stuff for the. But I mean, still, still, it's William Sadler. Like that dude fucking rules. You'll obviously remember him.
Oh, he's great
as the Grim Reaper from the Bill and Ted's movies, but also he's in Shawshank Redemption. Frank Darabont again. Flanagan likes to reuse his guys. Darabont likes to reuse his guys. So.
Oh yeah, I mean he's in fucking everything.
Yeah.
Always playing a bastard too.
Yeah. I mean, he's such a great bastard, which is
either a bastard or a mechanic. I swear those are his two characters. Bastard or mechanic.
And in this one, he's both.
Mechanic bastard.
He's both.
Yeah. Oh, is he a mechanic in this movie?
I mean, I assume because like both him and Myron are wearing like jumpsuits.
And they're all covered in grease.
Yeah,
You're right.
They're covered in grease.
Yeah,
they know how to run the generator. They have like little name tags on their jumpsuits. So they're mechanics and bastards. But he starts as a mechanic and turns to a bastard.
That's true. Yeah.
Let's see. Who else do we have that's in the store with us? We have Toby Jones, who plays Ollie Weeks. And like you'll recognize him from a bunch of stuff. He was like in the Hunger Games. He was in one of the Captain America movies. So like he's kind of all over the place. He was just recently in Indiana Jones 5. I didn't see it, but he was there. So I mean he's one of those characters. He has 140 acting credits. You've seen him somewhere.
You are 100% going to recognize him. Yeah.
And then Jeffrey DeMunn, who plays Dan Miller. Dan Miller is kind of our canary in the coal mine. Because he runs out of the mist as the mist is approaching, and he's all bloody, and he's screaming, "There's something in the mist!" And this is where things get set off, and you start like this monster movie because the mist descends on the supermarket, trapping everybody inside. People are generally freaked out, and they don't want to go out into the mist, except for one woman who is desperate to go get her kids, and she just runs off. And this is the other thing that's great about watching it in black and white. The way people and objects fade in and out of the mist is fucking fantastic. It's so amazing.
I can imagine that looks fantastic. And she's another Walking Dead alum. She's a huge character in The Walking Dead. She plays it's Carol, right?
Right. She plays Carol in The Walking Dead.
Yeah, in The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I didn't see her on the IMDb here. She's further down. But she's a huge, long-term character in The Walking Dead.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one who's pretty big in The Walking Dead for the first couple seasons is Laurie Holden. She plays the teacher in this film, but she plays Andrea in The Walking Dead.
And she's there for quite a few seasons, too. I want to say she's least 3, if not 4 seasons, right?
I'm pretty sure it's 3 because I'm pretty sure she makes it out of the, I think she makes it out of the farm. So yeah. And, I mean, Jeffrey DeMunn's on there as well. Like Jeffrey DeMunn's also another kind of Darabont standard because he was also in the Green Mile. So like constant.
He doesn't make it quite as far in The Walking Dead.
No,
he's always the same type of like sympathetic dad character,
which he plays in this as well as, you know, and it's effective. But yeah, after the mist descends, you have it turns into a monster movie, but it's a mystery monster movie because it's always something new coming out of the mist. It's always, you know, like it starts with the tentacles in the back and you get this generator that's flaring up. And so you have to assume like something's clogging the air vent. And then you find out it's damn tentacles clogging the air vent.
Sons of bitchin' tentacles. Ain't it always tentacles?
Always tentacles. But throughout this, you also get the divides in the supermarket crowd. You have the people who are logical and are believing what they see, which is mainly Thomas Jane, but also Ollie Weeks pretty much always has his back. And then Amanda, you know, the teacher, has his back.
Right.
Because they're witnessing the shit and they're just like taking it at face value. There's a weird threat and we don't understand it, but we have to do something about it. Then you have Mrs. Carmody and everything is Jesus with her. Everything is the reckoning. Everything is, you know, destruction.
Yeah. Everything is confirmation bias.
Yeah, it's confirmation bias of the end of days. And that's just where her mindset is. Like, Thomas Jane, you get no sense that his Drayton character believes. But at the same time, Andre Braugher's character of Brent, he doesn't necessarily believe the mumbo jumbo either, but he doesn't believe in sitting around and being a victim. He doesn't believe what's happening is even happening at all. And so like he leads a group into the parking lot, and that's kind of the first, you know, that's the first group to go. And I just love this scene because it's a whole bunch of them who run out, you know, Andre Braugher, a couple other guys, and then like this big biker dude, and he mouths off to Mrs. Carmody before he leaves. And he has like a rope tied around him as they're, you know, running out. So they want to see, you know,
like around his waist, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's around his waist. So they're trying to figure out like how deep does this shit go? The wind up is just like a bunch of noise and a bunch of slack. And then there's silence as they're pulling in, you know, the line. And just I love the reaction of when the line shifts from a white rope to a red or black, depending on what you're watching, you know, blood covered rope. And then just the entire crowd that sees it just goes, oh,
yeah. My favorite thing about this movie is not my favorite thing, but like just a genius decision with this movie is not only putting it in a grocery store, the story set in a grocery store, but the big wall of windows at the front, you know, like pretty typical for a grocery store, but just like you could have done a different type of thing and it just wouldn't have been as impactful. But this big wall of windows, it's like everyone is watching their, you know, potential demise, all the threats. It's almost like they're watching it on a big movie screen in front of them, you know?
Right. Yeah, there's something very voyeuristic about it because they're watching people die outside, but also you still can't make out what's in there. You don't know what's coming for you. It's like, you know, it's like a fucked up zoo in a way. Like, because there's a bunch of animals, but they're coming for
Jurassic
you.
Parky. It's almost like you're standing on the side of the other side of the fence in Jurassic Park, and the goat pops up on the other side and whatever, and something comes out of the trees and snatches you. You can't quite see it until you do. You know. Yeah.
There was one quote that I loved is like when things are breaking down, and this is actually kind of back towards the tentacle scene, but there's the supermarket manager. His name's Bud. And he's like upset at everybody because they're trying to spread. He thinks they're spreading lies about a tentacle or whatever. And he's like yelling at people. And he's mad because Ollie was drinking after seeing Norm die from the tentacle. And he's like, I'm going to write all your names down. And Ollie's like, write all your names down, but shut the fuck up, which is just such a like, shut up, nerd. Now's not the time for this dumb bullshit.
Yeah, stop being a fucking narc for 1 second.
Yeah, because I mean, it's really the signal of like collapse of society as you're going to know it, because like, you know, generally we live in like an obnoxious tattletale society where like, I'm going to tell the boss and you're going to be in trouble. It's like, no, we're all going to die, dude. Now's not the time for, shut the fuck up for this.
Right.
Another thing I wanted to point out of just this film being in black and white, and I don't know if this has happened for you or not, if you watched other more modern films made in black and white, but this film has so many other modern filmmaking methods of, there's a lot of like shallow focus where like you'll get a frame of like Thomas Jane's face being completely, you know, like half the frame.
Yeah.
But then like in the background is just like, it's all blurred out because he's not even focusing on what's going on in the background, but you still kind of hear it. There's also just like a lot of handheld chaos of like the cameras,
especially in the whole sequence when the monsters start to come inside the pterodactyl and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it looks weird because the film's in black and white. And when you think of like the old B monster movies, most of them are just filmed on flat angle. You know, rarely does the camera move or anything. So it's really interesting to see all this like handheld movement going on. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see it. When you texted me, I was like, I mean, I'm going to watch it eventually because, like I said, I love this movie. I've seen it so many times, but I had already watched it for this episode.
Right.
So I didn't, but I'm intrigued to go see it because, like, yeah, I can see certain scenes. One of my favorite scenes, which we haven't gotten to yet, is when they have all the dog food bags stacked up against the front window. And, like, I just feel like that would look really cool. Yeah. You know, with the light coming through and like there's like a limited amount of light inside because they shut down some of the lights. I think that would look really cool. But I am intrigued to see how some of the more like modern camera movements would look in black and white. Yeah.
I mean, it's just that they stick out. Like, and you can focus more on those movements because like you're not, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm not as overstimulated with the fucking color or something. But just like all of the more modern camera movements and like focus racking and things like that, all of that sticks out more when it's presented as a more old timey movie, I guess. But like you're saying though, also that scene where, you know, like kind of it's the first night in the market and they start getting bugs on the window and they're these like giant horse flies, like they're giant horse flies with like human teeth and little pincers and everything, and they have stingers. But they had the lights shining out from the supermarket into the mist. And yeah, it looks amazing. It looks fantastic. But then, they learn like, oh yeah, the mist, our lights are attracting the bugs and then the bugs attract the pterodactyls. And then you get this awesome chaotic scene. I was just like, holy shit. Yeah. This is where you kind of get Rick, or I just called Rick. This is where, because Rick. It's a similar dynamic of Thomas Jane and his son, and Rick and his son, but especially in the early seasons.
Yeah, wonder it would be cool. It would be even better. I could imagine Thomas Jane's kid wearing like a cowboy hat too, like
right, yeah,
doofy little cowboy hat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because he's doing a bunch of stuff to like try and calm his son. Like he tries to get him candy and tries to get him comic books and just like, here, focus on this stuff. Don't worry about the monsters and, you know, like that you're in mortal danger. But like he starts to learn like who he can't trust his son to be around because like the woman he left in charge of him, like gives him up to almost get eaten by the pterodactyl. And like she takes it pretty hard because she just pills out and dies. But yeah, they wind up starting a fire and they wind up setting a guy on fire, which again looks great in black and white. Yeah, I can see that. Which causes them, they have to go get the fucking medicine to help him. And they find an MP who's been glued up by these spiders, again with human teeth and like little skull faces. Yeah, they do it. They have like skull faces. Yeah. But the MP admits that, hey, we did this. This is our fault. Our bad guys. whoopsie doo. And then he dies and bursts into a bunch of spiders, which is crazy. Like everything up to this point is just like crazy monster movie silliness.
Yeah.
You know, like
the spiders are like, so I'll admit, I like I said, I love this movie, seen it a bunch of times. We'll continue to watch it. I think this movie starts to lose me at spider explosion out of the body.
Yeah.
It's just not, it feels too, you lose some of the mystery of what's happening. I love shit coming out of the mist. It's cool that shit's coming out of the mist. You don't know what's happening. Love the scene where they try to make a run for it, which we haven't got to with this fucking spiders and shit. Like that's fine because now you're lost in the mist and it feels very Silent Hill-ish, right? But when they go to the like, what is it? Is it a laundromat or something next door?
It's a pharmacy. It's a it's like an old school pharmacy that also has like a lunch counter to it too.
Yeah. Yep. And the spiders pop out of the MP and all that stuff, and he's like still alive. Yeah, that's actually that's probably my least favorite part of the movie, to be honest with you.
I mean, I can see why, because it does feel like so many other things, but mainly it also feels like Alien. Like, yeah,
you're right. It does. It feels very alien-like. Not only the popping out of him, but like just the idea of him being a host to these things.
Right. Because you think about how like all the other monsters are like they have like a real otherworldly quality to them.
Mm-hmm.
And like the horse flies, let it go. That doesn't bother me too much. But then spiders is just such an easy layup to play on an audience's arachnophobia is what it is.
If it was like, because the pterodactyls are cool, they seem like they're from a different time, right? Or a different fucking, they seem Lovecraftian, right? And we're gonna get some very Lovecraftian shit later. But like, if they would have been like little crabs or something, that would have been way cooler.
Yeah, little crabs or something, like a slug of some sort.
Yeah, spiders are just too on the nose.
Yeah, just like a slug that was like eating somebody halfway. Hey, that's
fucking acid slugs, because they are acid, like they spit acid. So
they shoot acid out their butts.
Acid slugs would have been cooler. I don't know. Spiders are creepy, right? Don't get me wrong, but they're just it's just too on the nose.
If it feels like there was like a bunch of things pitched at the wall, and they're like, somebody said spiders, and then they're like, "Yo, we have spiders," and you're like, not spiders with acid butts and human faces.
And they're like, all right, fine.
All right.
You got us.
But yeah, I mean, they're not a huge part of the story either way. Either way, like it's just a scene that they're really featured in, and then another scene is part of like what's chasing them around the parking lot. So it's not the biggest deal. But this is where the movie turns, because after they hear the MP admit, and like the soldiers, there's a soldier on this away party to get the medicine. He brings it back to the supermarket and tells the other MPs that are with him. And this is where it turns, because those other MPs just wind up hanging themselves. And this is where it gets dark, because the MPs hang themselves and Mrs. Carmody is like on her bullshit now, because she had quote unquote been chosen not to get stabbed by the horseflies. And so it's all confirmation bias for her. She's riling up the crowd, and William Sadler, his character goes into full breakdown because he's seen everybody else around him die. So he sides with Mrs. Carmody, and he's also like a dog brain. Like, he's a dum-dum. Like he has no proof one way or the other. He just goes in and just says, maybe this will keep me safe.
Shit goes down. You shoot Mrs. Carmody immediately.
Oh yeah.
You gotta off her immediately. Get her out of the picture. She's nothing but trouble.
Yeah. I had a note. It's like, my note was like, if I was in this situation, I would just be like, hey, I saw a bunch of Bibles back in the freezer, and then just lock her in the freezer. Like, you have to. Yeah.
I saw somebody burning the American flag out back by that tentacle monster. Go check that out.
Yeah.
And she was like, don't tread on me. She runs out and gets tentacled immediately.
Yeah. Just like you can't have those people in dire situations.
No, get them out of here. Get them out of here. You got to just weed those out.
Yeah, it's like you want to pray, that's fine, but don't be riling people up into doing shit.
Don't start getting all wild and
yeah,
slapping the Bible. And
yeah, ultimately what they do is they sacrifice somebody to a giant tentacle crab who you barely ever see it. It's like a couple legs and things sticking out of the mist.
Right.
But they sacrifice somebody, and then she goes, "The beast will leave us now," and then it does. So I guess that's what works. So now we just have to sacrifice people to the tentacle crab. It's outside.
Yeah. It's like I said, the confirmation bias is strong with Mrs. Carmody.
Yeah. And, that darkness just continues as, like, they eventually try to sacrifice the kid. They also try to kill the teacher. Basically anybody who's been at odds with Mrs. Carmody is now on the chopping block. And everybody's trying to leave. You have just, like, a small party of people at this point, because I think there's 7 of them try to get out. 7 or 8. Yeah, I think it's 8 because it's the 5 people who wind up in the vehicle, but Toby goes out with him and he gets torn apart and drops the gun. And then there's 2 other older fellers with him. There's like the one older guy who's in a suit and then another older guy who's like, I have a shotgun in my truck. And that's about.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. And they both get taken down by the spiders. So that's what, they try to escape. And they wind up in this truck driving down the mist, and they just said, let's try to go until we can't go. They stop at David Drayton's house and see that it's also been Spider-Man'd. And, his wife is dead.
His wife got spidered up.
Yeah. And so, like, this is just the building of, like, dark themes. The town is turned against them. The army is hanging themselves. Your wife is dead. As they're driving down the highway,
it's looking pretty bleak.
Yeah, pretty damn bleak. As they're driving down the highway, they pass a school bus. It's a school bus full of dead kids. Like,
they got spidered.
Yeah, just a callback to Maximum Overdrive, to that time the plane suicided dived the school bus.
You're right. That was definitely a callback. A conscious callback.
Callback.
I will not argue. That's what it was.
Yeah, Frank Darabont knows how to how to play on your emotions and just like, hey, dead bus full of kids. And then you also get this enormous, impossibly huge, Lovecraftian elephant that you can't tell which way is its ass aside from the direction it's walking.
Fucking tentacles all over the place.
Yeah.
You got to assume it's got a lot of eyeballs.
Somewhere. Can't see them. They're probably up top.
You just know that's a Lovecraftian thing. Everything's got a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
A lot of eyes, a lot of mouths.
It looks great in black and white. Just because, like, it's you get the little bit of the harsh sun trying to cut through the mist. But everything becomes so nebulous when you look up at it. Like, you can tell there's tentacles in there, but there's no defined shape in there. It's just all gray and wriggling, and it's gross. And it's like, well, that's terrifying. This road trip is over.
Yeah, this is lame. Call it quits. Yeah. I could see that. It doesn't look bad in color, but I could imagine it looking better in black and white.
Yeah.
No, and like, for those of you who didn't see it, it's like, it's fucking 60 feet tall. Yeah. Like, it's like impossibly huge.
It's above the tree line. So yeah. I mean, I don't think it looks bad in color. It looks different. Like, this is one of those ones that, like, it works either way, I feel. Like, there's definite stuff that looks better in black and white, and there's definite stuff that actually kind of looks better in color. This is one of the ones that kind of works either way, because, like, in color, you do get the more definition of, like, there's a bunch of tentacles and shit going on. This one, it feels more mysterious and Lovecraftian in the way that you can't see exactly what's going on. That indescribable horror.
I can see less is more. Oh my God. I've been reading. I just read was it the Dunwich Horror?
Yeah.
And then Whispers in the Dark I just read too. And like I said, I'm going through this, and it's just like, I love Lovecraft, despite all his weird racistness, and just like xenophobia is like his number one theme through all his stories is xenophobia, pretty much. But like, I genuinely do really like Lovecraft, but good God, it starts to get repetitive after a while. Everything is beyond what you can imagine.
You can never comprehend
100% of your brain. Yeah. It starts to get a little boring. Like, I have to like read a story and then go back and read something else, then come back to it. Cause I'm like, Jesus Christ. Which is just, we get it. We can't understand it with our human brains. We get it.
Which is just like the hallmark of like a writer who's too afraid.
Yeah.
Like if you're, I remember like writing stories as a kid, and there would just be certain things you wouldn't write because you would be afraid of getting in trouble. Like if somebody found it, you know, you wouldn't write swears, or you wouldn't write, you know, certain things. And I just like, that's kind of what I think of Lovecraft sometimes. I like a lot of the stories, but also I think like, I would get in so much trouble if I told people what this actually looked like. So I'm just going to say, if you tried to comprehend it, you would go mad. Ooh, isn't that terrifying?
It's just like, it's basically, if you like Lovecraft, just go like really purple prose over the top. Just go read Poe, and it's just a better version, just not quite as cosmic.
Yeah, I feel like what he really wanted to write was probably like it had 5 dicks, but he would get in trouble if it had 5 dicks. Right. It's like I really like all the ideas, but it's just like the that trope that is just, God, it's so over. Yeah.
Anyway. So we've got our big Lovecraftian fucking dinosaur elephant with 1,000 tentacles and 40 dicks.
And it's pretty dire at this point. The truck runs out of gas, and this is where we get the ending of all endings. It lands like a fucking sledgehammer. Like, it hurts so bad to watch this.
It's so intense. It's so unnecessary. And I love Frank Darabont for doing this, because this is not the story.
No, it isn't. This is one of the, like, I think I said this when we were previewing the movies on the last episode, but like, this is one of the 2 endings that like were specific, or, you know, 2 times that Stephen King had his stuff changed for the better, whereas like The Shining was changed for the better as a film, even though King hates it, and then this ending was changed for the better, and King actually likes this ending. So
he did. He was like all about this. And also it's like, it's one of those things where like he's friends with Frank Darabont.
Oh yeah.
So like they're buds.
Yeah.
So like, of course he's going to like what his buddy does. And then like, you know, no one is friends with Stanley Kubrick. Like, he doesn't have friends.
Not at all.
You know? So like, of course he hates it, because like Stanley Kubrick's the most hateable motherfucker in the world. As much of a huge Kubrick fan as I am, Stanley Kubrick doesn't have friends. You know?
I'm okay with him being just a weird, you know, misanthrope. I'm okay with that. He's still talented, but but Darabont and King had obviously already worked together on The Green Mile and Shawshank, so this was, you know, kind of a layup for Darabont to adapt something else by him. But yeah, the ending is the truck runs out of gas. There's 5 people in the truck, including Amanda, Drayton's son, Drayton, and then Dan Miller, who actually started the film, which is started the call out that the mist has something in it, and then just an older teacher. And there's the gun. There's 4 bullets for the gun, and Thomas Jane actually gives probably one of his better performances ever, after he has to shoot everybody else in the truck but himself. And
you see it from a low lying angle outside of the, it's like a Jeep. They're driving like like an 80s Jeep,
or a Land Rover. I think it might be
something like that. It's like an SUV. Yeah.
An older SUV that was actually meant for rock climbing. Right. Yeah. But yeah, you see it from the outside, and like, you see the gun flashes, and the only real movement you see is you see Amanda's body slump over. Other than that, you can just assume everything, and then it cuts back into the truck, You don't see really anybody. I think Dan is over Drayton's shoulder. That's the only person you actually see dead.
You see one of them, or I couldn't remember if it was that or the teacher, but you see them kind of like, slumped over. And so in your head, you're going like, oh my God, how did he do it? Did he shoot the kid first? Like, who did, you know what I mean?
Right.
So you're like, your brain is just reeling.
Yeah. But then it's just Drayton alone in the truck, just screaming. And then fucking puts the gun in his own mouth, knowing he doesn't even have bullets. He just wants anything and just tries to kill himself
just
anyway.
Hopefully I miscounted. Just desperation.
Yeah, just anything. And then that's not it. So he decides to go out into the mist. That's not it. That's not the answer. So he goes out into the mist, hoping to get eaten. And you hear all the monster noises in the mist. Like, you don't know what's going to be the thing to come claim him.
Yeah. And he's like, come on, like, fucking come get me. You know?
Just more screaming. And then it's an M1 Abrams tank that comes out of the mist.
Oh, no.
It's the biggest whoops ever.
It's a real whoopsie daisy.
Yeah. Biggest whoops ever. M1 Abrams tank comes out. All the soldiers come out. They got flamethrowers going on. A fucking
They're fucking all the monsters up. Yeah.
A transport truck drives by and it has Carol and her kids that she went out to go save from the beginning.
And she did.
Yeah, and she did. That's like, I don't know what that is comparatively, but that's like Frank Darabont doing a spin kick to everybody's guts. Like,
well, and then also she looks at him in this just like, you pussy ass bitch, like almost like she knows what happened. Because we didn't talk about it that much before, but when Carol goes out to save her kids, so she's like single mom, this is early
like this
right
is the first thing
drops, and she's like, who's gonna come help me? And all the men folk, right, as Lovecraft would call them, are like just straight up just cowards. Like, they're like, no, we're not gonna come help you. So she goes out, and at the moment you think she is wandering into certain death, but she was the only one who actually had faith in her, abilities to go help her kids. And she did. Right. And you pussy ass bitch. Took the, you know what I mean?
Look what you did. You were too afraid. You didn't. Yeah. And like you're saying, all the men at the beginning of that are just like eyes to the ground. And Thomas Shane's like, I got to look out for my own son. But if he would have took him with him, there's a good chance they would have just got out. But and this ending, like, I don't know what it is. I think it's just because like the flamethrowers and everything. It reminds me of Full Metal Jacket, because you have like the column of soldiers and the flamethrowers are going off, and like there's some music playing, but then eventually the music just gives way to silence and trucks and helicopters driving. Yeah. Like, it's the most sit in your filth fucking kind of credit roll.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember when because you don't really see anything. It's emotionally, like I said, emotionally devastating. Yeah. Like, and I remember the first time I saw this was on cable. Like, it was on Sci-Fi or something like that. And I remember just thinking like, Jesus Christ. Like, I was at my parent, I was probably in college or I get I was probably in college.
Yeah, you were in college because I was in college. Yeah, because I saw it in college at the theater.
And I was at home. Like, I was at my parents' house, so I must have been home for a holiday or weekend or whatever, and laying on my parents' couch watching it in their living room, and everyone else was asleep. Like, the lights were off, and I'm just laying on the couch watching this movie, and that ends, and I remember just thinking to myself like, Jesus Christ. And then I just like shut the TV off and like went and ate like a bowl of cereal. And I was like, fuck me. It's like, so guess I'll go to bed now, motherfucker. Yeah. Well, and two, like I remember watching this, and this might be two different instances that I'm like blending together in my brain, but I remember laying there one night at my parents' house, probably around the same, within a couple of years, and watching this and 30 Days of Night. Oh yeah. Like back to back. Yeah. Because they used to play those on, again, I think it was Sci-Fi all the fucking time.
I think so too. Yeah.
And that's a pretty bleak ending too.
Yeah. It's not great.
Yeah. And just thinking like, Jesus Christ. Christ.
Yeah. I remember seeing The Mist in the theater when it came out, and just it was a completely silent. Everybody was just like bum out.
Yeah, it's a real bummer.
But undeniably good as a horror movie, because it builds horror in so many different ways. Of like like I said, it does all culminate really quickly and just like as a reminder at the end. But like you had that first scene of Carol asking for help from the military, and they don't. But then the military is like broken down. They can't save anybody. The one military guy can't save his girlfriend. Everybody's losing their mind and becoming more religious and, zealotous, looking for an answer. So they're endangering, when the danger turns inward and starts coming from the people, that's when it gets like fucking serious. And so, it's, you have that and the monsters, and it's seemingly unending, The Mist itself, because you drive on a full tank of gas, which is, usually 300, 400 miles, and it's still there, and you go, fuck.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I think, and listen, this isn't my idea. Like, I was reading up a little bit about this beforehand, but like, it's pretty clear. This is a pretty big theme of the movie too, is like the idea of hope. You know what I mean? Like you have hope, and like the idea of holding on to hope, no matter how dire the scenario seems. So, Carol, I'm going to say Carol because that's what I know her as.
Right, yeah.
She leaves early, and she's got hope, even though they're like, no, this is certain death. But she held on to it, and she, even, all the odds stacked against her, she held on to it, and ultimately she prevailed. Whereas Thomas Jane, gave up hope at the end, and then, 5 seconds, if you just held on for fucking 2 more minutes, you would have been in the clear. And that's the benefit of like always having hope, is like you're always potentially 1 second from coming out on top, kind of thing. So it's like, you have all these shitbirds back at the grocery store who are all like, I have faith in this and that. And, I have faith that if we, start murdering people, that things are going to end up great for us. But it's just like, you should, how do I say it? You should put that energy towards just like survival at all costs is like the ultimate lesson.
Yeah. Self-preservation without the risk of taking other people's lives is what it is. Yeah. Because like it's obviously evil that they want to sacrifice people in the grocery store to tentacle crab, but
like if you just like I feel like the underlying theme is like we as humans are given a moral compass. Stick to that, and you're going to be better off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't let it be bastardized by God or your, whatever you decide is the easy way out or whatever.
Right. Right. Yep. Let the monsters take you if they have to, but don't do it yourself. Yeah. Don't do it. All right.
Don't you do it.
That's The Mist.
That is The Mist. All right. I'm going to do a quick pee break, grab another beer, and I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Continued in part 2.